Once again, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. As always, I am Zak, the Corruption Detector, and this is yet another edition of Red Pill News. I hope everyone is having a lovely day and that you had a nice weekend as well. Some great shows we did on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so check those out if you haven't yet. We've got a lot of news to go over today. First of all, we're going to be breaking down what Trump said about pharmaceutical brokers over the past week, talking about the middlemen. We're going to look at some of those middlemen, and we're going to hear what some witnesses had to say regarding their role in brokering pharmaceuticals. Then we've got some new information about the actual FBI official who briefed the Senate Intel Committee and lied, the same one that Lindsey Graham was saying needs to go to jail. Also, we've got some more information coming from Senate Chairman Ron Johnson. He has subpoenaed the FBI director as well as ex-State Department officials in regards to the Russia-Ukraine probe. We've also got a little more information about that coming from Catherine Herridge. We've got an update on the Flynn hearing, which is tomorrow. That's coming from Technofog. It looks like Mount Sinaiberg in Indonesia has erupted, so we're going to be looking at that. Also, the city of Chicago, their Goose Island neighborhood, has apparently been hit by rioters and looters. And China is imposing sanctions against Cruz, Rubio, and other U.S. lawmakers over Hong Kong. And finally, my friend, The Dirty Truth has a clip for us from Fox News talking about the incredible coincidence. It looks like over 97,000 children have just recently tested positive for CV-19. What a coincidence, as we're getting to the moment when schools are potentially going to reopen. I bet you this is going to have an impact on that. So please, everyone, sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a very brief word from our sponsor. Breaking news has just been released stating that several VPNs that didn't have a no-log policy revealed the browsing activity and personal information of over 20 million users. Those that care about privacy need a VPN with a strict no-log policy to prevent this from happening, and that's why I choose Virtual Shield. Virtual Shield has that strict no-log policy. Their network is fast, reliable, secure, and always available. Let me show you guys how easy it is. Alright, so here we are. We'll go to what is my IP. You can see it's right there. Now, when I connect to Virtual Shield, that will mask my actual location, and it now shows that I am here in Chicago, Illinois, and my location is secure. Due to the recent pandemic, Virtual Shield is offering their services at 50% off to help customers in need protect themselves, plus you get a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is go to virtualshield.com/redpill78 or click the link in the video description or pinned comment below. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First of all, today, I had one message I wanted to put out there before we get into the news. Last night, I got on Twitter late, and I saw that people were sharing some heinous things. Now, I understand that the people in this movement that would share those things were trying to draw awareness so that people could report. However, once you put that image in front of someone's face who is not looking to see something that horrible, it's not something they can easily get out of their head. I can't get that out of my head, and I didn't want to look at it. And also, by sharing that disgusting trash, you guys are implicating yourself in a crime. There is one thing to be said to draw attention to an account so that people can report it. There's another thing to be said entirely for actually sharing the content that these criminals are putting out there. I don't care what the reason is. It's not a good idea, and it's not fair to people who don't want to see it. It's also not a good idea for your own safety, your own security, and it's all we need to have someone write an article saying that people in this movement are now actively distributing that kind of content. So I'm just going to ask anybody who did share that stuff, please delete it. Get it off your timelines. Don't force other people to look at it. I don't even know who did. As soon as I saw it in my timeline, I immediately closed Twitter and just closed it out. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know anymore. I knew exactly what was going on, and I've seen other people talking about it too. But it is the kind of thing that you cannot easily wipe from your memory. There are people out there all of us, I think, know exactly what's going on. They know how heinous this stuff is. And there are people like myself who are victims of this kind of stuff. And we don't need to have that stuff dragged up and put back in the front of our minds. It's just not fair. And it's not something that I think anybody should be doing. And I can't think of a good reason for anyone to be sharing that content. It doesn't matter if you're trying to bring awareness to it. It doesn't matter if you think you're doing the right thing. You're not doing the right thing. And it is technically against the law. So please, delete any of it. Do not archive it. Do not keep it on your phone. All we need is for one bad apple to decide that they're going to destroy this movement because people had good intentions, no matter how misguided they are. All right, that's all I want to say. Now, first of all, I want to bring your memory back to this statement that President Trump made the other day. He was at the Whirlpool factory in Ohio. My buddy J.R. Majewski was there, and he was talking about the new deal he was creating for pharmaceuticals, which will allow the American public to buy pharmaceuticals at a much, much lower cost than what they were sold before. You can go to another country, Canada, Mexico, India. You can get pharmaceutical pills, whatever your prescription is, for pennies. But then you come here to America, and even with insurance, you have to pay thousands of dollars. Okay? I said yesterday on Comfy Sunday, I pay $600 a month, almost $700 a month for private health care. Okay? And even with that private insurance, if I have to go to the doctor, it still costs me $200. If I have to go to the hospital, it still costs me thousands of dollars. That trip that I took to the hospital in early March, end of February, it ended up costing me almost $5,000. That was after insurance had paid whatever they were supposed to pay. And President Trump, with this one move, he is wiping billions of dollars out of the pockets of these middlemen. And these people are not happy. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
It has to be a good product, but the middlemen, well, the rebate that I'm doing cuts out the middlemen and it reduces costs, and the money goes back to the people purchasing the drugs. So I have a lot of enemies out there. This may be the last time you'll see me for a while. A lot of very, very rich enemies, but they are not happy with what I'm doing. But I figure we have one chance to do it, and no other president's going to do what I do. No other president would do a favored nations, a rebate, a buy from other nations at much less cost. Nobody.
So President Trump cutting out the middlemen so that the money goes back into the pockets of the American consumer. He's right. He has a lot of rich and powerful enemies. There are people who would kill for hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, but billions of dollars. You better believe it. And it's not just that he cares about the American public. It's that he is brave enough to do what must be done. The American people have been fleeced for far too long. And President Trump, in this one move, is going to put so much money back in our pockets. But at the same time, he's going to make some very rich and powerful people very angry. So who are these pharmaceutical brokers? Well, obviously there's lobbyists. You've got people that are in Congress who are receiving kickbacks as a result of making sure the American public have to pay ridiculous amounts of money for their pharmaceuticals. And you've got other people who run foundations, who broker pharmaceuticals in other countries, and then also take a large cut. All right, so Methods brought this clip back up. Right here, these were a couple of gentlemen. They were forensic accountants. These gentlemen are essentially forensic bounty hunters. They were looking into the finances of the Clinton Foundation, and they discovered that they were essentially acting as agents of foreign nations. Well, one of the ways in which they were doing that was by brokering pharmaceuticals. Let's go ahead and take a listen to a little bit of their testimony before the House Oversight Committee.
You said in your opening statement you used the term agent of a foreign government. Give me an example of that.
You want to take that one?
Sure. There are so many examples. Mozambique in 2002, there was a memorandum of agreement between the foundation and the Mozambique to work on their behalf through their Ministry of Health program. And again, through that engagement, it was plainly obvious, again, based on emails that we've reviewed, that this was not a Clinton Foundation program per se. They were there to support the Mozambique Ministry of Health. So really, if you want to reduce this to layman's terms, they were brokering money and they were brokering pharmaceuticals. That's the term on Wall Street we use, brokering. John uses the term agent. They were an agent of money through these donors. They would take a for lack of a better term, a vig in terms of their fees, broker the money, and then they negotiated these relationships with the pharmaceutical companies. And by the same token, they were brokering the pharmaceuticals and, again, taking the vig.
And is that why I think one of your concluding remarks was the Clinton Foundation functioned as a closely held family partnership, not a charity?
Yes.
So, just one in a long line of Clinton family and Clinton Foundation criminal acts. What they're doing in Mozambique is the same thing that happens to the consumers here in America. Pharmaceutical companies, their representatives, they broker deals. They ensure that pharmaceuticals are sold at a certain rate. As a result, people get a vig. They get a kickback. And you better believe that people in Congress who do not have the best interest of the American public at heart, they are some of those people who are taking cuts. So it's not just former public servants like Bill and Hillary Clinton. It's current public servants, it's lobbyists in Washington, it is people at the pharmaceutical companies themselves. They take a ridiculous share on top of the actual costs of these drugs. And the costs are then passed on to the American consumer. Why? So everybody can get a cut. And President Trump is the only one, the only person in history, in America, in our government, that was willing to take a stand and to remove them from the equation so that Americans like me, so that Americans like my daughter, so that Americans like you can afford to pay for their medicine, can afford to remain alive, can afford to remain healthy, and maintain a quality of life that the rich and powerful at this time are the only ones who are able to enjoy. President Trump, doing what he's done this past week, has placed himself in great physical danger. And we need to pray for him and his safety, and for the safety of Melania and his children and everyone else in his administration who are doing the work to restore America and to give our people and our children a freedom that they have never, ever possibly enjoyed. The future is brighter at this time than it's ever been at any point in our history, my friends. And President Trump is the one who's doing that. And we are here to support him. And we must make sure he's elected once more in November. You know, there's people out there saying that President Trump is this, President Trump is that. I look at the man's actions, okay? I look at the things he's done, the decisions he's made, the leadership that he has put forth. He is truly saving our country. And I don't care what you think of President Trump. I don't care what kind of person he is. I look at the man's actions and I look and I see a good man. I see a man who cares about this country. I see a man who cares about its citizens. And I see a man who cares about our Constitution and who cares about the future. Right now, there's nobody else. And there hasn't been anybody else that's been able to get to this point, that's been able to do these things for our country, that's been a representative of us in Washington. This is the most important election of our lives, and I urge you, please consider that come November. All right, breaking news. We got some information about this Senate Intel Committee briefing back in 2018, and at the time, we didn't know who it was that gave the briefing, but we did know from Lindsey Graham and what he said that the briefing was a lie. The person who delivered the briefing lied to Congress. And Maria Bartiromo has put this tweet out saying that it looks like the FBI official who did that briefing on February 14th of 2018 was none other than Andrew McCabe. So chalk that up into Andrew McCabe's crimes of lies and crimes, and I really hope that Lindsey Graham is going to come through on this one, or at least somebody will come through on this one. We've had so many people lie to Congress on the other side. So many people have twisted the truth. So many people who have tried to pin crimes on other people. Well, this is an actual crime. Let's see you do something about it. Now, Senator Ron Johnson, who has been hard at work on this Russia investigation, has sent a subpoena for FBI Director Christopher Wray, asking him to produce all records related to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation by August 20th. And also another subpoena has been prepared for Mr. Jonathan Weiner, a former employee of the State Department. Now let's look at some reporting on what else Senator Johnson is doing from Just the News. So, with Ron Johnson subpoenaing the FBI director, Christopher Wray, as well as this ex-State Department official, you might say that the investigation into the whole Russia-Ukraine stuff is really starting to intensify. Now, what we've learned, all the evidence that's been presented, has showed a clear correlation between U.S. corruption and Russia and Ukraine, and not only that, but it ties back to Joe Biden and his family in a glaring conflict of interest. Everything that Hunter Biden, everything that Joe Biden was doing over there in Ukraine was self-serving. Joe Biden was the vice president of the United States, and Hunter Biden was profiting off his father's position. Now, Ron Johnson is, of course, the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, and earlier today, he accused Democrats of levying false allegations against him and other GOP investigators in an effort to distract from the evidence that has come forward that his committee has gathered about Joe and Hunter Biden's dealings in Ukraine. He said, "We didn't target Joe and Hunter Biden for investigation. Their previous actions had put them in the middle of it." He continued, "Many in the media, in an ongoing attempt to provide cover for former Vice President Biden, continue to repeat the mantra that there is no evidence of wrongdoing or illegal activity related to Hunter Biden and his position on the Burisma board." And Johnson said, "I cannot disagree more." Now, Johnson noted evidence gathered by his committee which shows conclusively Joe Biden met with his son's business partner, Devon Archer, in April of 2014, and within a month, the vice president then visited Ukraine, and both his son Hunter and Devon Archer were put on the board of Burisma as the firm faced multiple corruption investigations. He said, "Isn't it obvious what message Hunter's position on Burisma's board sent to Ukrainian officials? The answer, if you want U.S. support, don't touch Burisma." It also raised a host of other questions, including how could former Vice President Joe Biden look any Ukrainian official or any other world leader in the face and demand action to fight corruption? He couldn't. It also asks, did this glaring conflict of interest affect the work and efforts of other U.S. officials who worked on anti-corruption measures? Now, sources familiar with Johnson's investigation say the committee has secured testimony from at least one State Department official who worked in Ukraine, and that official said that Biden's conduct created the appearance of a conflict of interest and undercut U.S. efforts to fight corruption in Kiev. Johnson also said that late last week he issued a formal subpoena to Wray, demanding he immediately surrender records from the Russia collusion probe that the committee has been seeking for months. He's got to do it by August 20th. It gives him about 10 days. Now, the subpoena gives Wray until 5 p.m. on the 20th, and it demands all the records from the probe known as Crossfire Hurricane, including any of those provided for a damning report by the Justice Department Inspector General. Johnson also announced his committee has prepared a subpoena for Jonathan Weiner, who is that former Obama State Department official. Now, Weiner had extensive contact with British intelligence operative Christopher Steele, who is, of course, the author of the PP dossier. Johnson said Mr. Weiner's counsel has not responded since Thursday as to whether they would accept a service of subpoena. If he does not respond by tomorrow, we will be forced to serve him through the U.S. Marshals, and more subpoenas can be expected to be issued in the coming days and weeks. Johnson and the Senate Finance Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley have been pursuing this two-track investigation for more than 2 years, examining both failures and corruption in the FBI's Russia probe, as well as the issue of Biden's corrupt conduct in Ukraine. He makes an excellent point here, John Solomon. There is absolutely no way that the Obama administration or Joe Biden could attempt to address issues of corruption in any country when they themselves were directly involved in corruption there in Ukraine. They were enriching themselves, they were taking advantage of the people of Ukraine, and this is a familiar refrain. Ukraine was in tatters by this point, and it was all due to the actions of the Obama administration. And Joe Biden saw an opportunity. He took his son, he placed him in there so that he could siphon up all that money and enrich himself, his son, and the rest of his family. Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are criminals of the worst degree, and Senator Johnson's investigation and these subpoenas could not come at a more timely juncture. The election is right around the corner, and if Christopher Wray does not produce this information, it's going to be a world of hurt for the FBI. We must get this information, and if it does not come forward, it's time for Wray to go. Now, Johnson mentioned the complicity of the media in framing this investigation into Joe Biden as if it's some type of partisan attack. And Method's got this clip here from CNN where Brian Stelter is asking a panel of liberals about these partisan attacks on Joe Biden. And what they have to say is so stunning. It's brief, but you guys need to see it.
getting worse. It's getting more severe. Aaron, your view of this, when you see entire media companies essentially exist to tear down Joe Biden, is there an equivalent to that on the left tearing down Trump?
There really isn't.
This is the biggest facepalm I've ever seen, claiming that media companies exist only to tear down Joe Biden and then saying that there's nothing on the left that exists to tear down President Trump. The entire mainstream media apparatus exists only to tear down President Trump. They have one goal: to make sure he's not elected come 2020. They had one goal in 2016 to make sure he wasn't elected in the first place. The only reason the media exists at this point is to exhibit vitriol and hatred for our president and to change the hearts and minds of American citizens, to lie to them through the usage of propaganda. They are the mainstream media arm of the Democratic Party. All they want to do is get rid of President Trump. Brian Stelter and all of these people on this panel, I can't believe how dense you are. All right, this is just a quick reminder. The Flynn hearing is tomorrow in Washington, D.C. It begins at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and I'm leaving the link to this tweet in the pinned comment below so that if you guys want to listen along with us, you will be able to do that. Don't miss it, and if you do, I'm going to be reporting on it in the afternoon. All right, next, tragedy has struck Mount Sinabung in Indonesia. A volcano in that region has exploded. There has been widespread devastation. I don't know anything about the number of deaths, but apparently this happened last year as well. You can see it is just an incredibly large plume of dust and smoke coming out of that volcano. I would imagine that since this happens semi-regularly, it seems like, they've probably got their ducks in a row and people are hopefully safe. But as of right now, this is all the information I have, and I'll continue to report as I get new information on it. All right, next from WGN in Chicago. Looks like tragedy has also struck the Goose Island neighborhood of Chicago. Here we have some footage from a drone or a helicopter showing a shopping plaza which has been looted. Many stores damaged. You see all kinds of property laying around. Obviously, the unrest taking place in the country is not over. It continues to this day. And right here, I want to just say this is exactly why we need our men and women in the uniform, our boys and girls in blue. This is the kind of stuff they're supposed to be protecting from. This is not the way that we want people to be behaving in America. And as long as the leaders of these Democrat-run cities are not willing to do anything about it, the police are there to protect us. Unfortunately, it looks like they were not there to protect this shopping center. All right, next, not to be outdone, China is imposing sanctions on people in our government in the same way that we've imposed sanctions on people in theirs. This time, they're choosing Senators Cruz, Rubio, and other U.S. lawmakers, including Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley, and Pat Toomey, as well as Representative Chris Smith. Now, China said it's going to be imposing these sanctions against a total of 11 U.S. citizens in direct response to Washington's move on Friday to impose sanctions on 11 Hong Kong and Chinese officials who had accused of curtailing political freedoms in that city. Now, as we said already, we've got Senators Cruz, Rubio, Cotton, Hawley, Pat Toomey, Representative Chris Smith, as well as individuals at certain nonprofit and human rights groups. They said in response to those wrong U.S. behaviors, China has decided to impose sanctions on individuals who have behaved egregiously on Hong Kong-related issues. I guess they have a problem with people in the U.S. who are interested in preserving human rights and the dignity of citizens all across the world. Now, of course, relations between us and China have deteriorated rapidly ever since the spread of CV-19 late last year, and Beijing's move is just the latest in a tit-for-tat round of sanctions between China and our country over allegations of human rights abuses and interference. Now, these sanctions on Friday by the United States were imposed on Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam, as well as the city's current and former police chiefs, under an executive order signed by President Donald Trump. Those sanctions specifically freeze any U.S. assets owned by the officials and generally bar Americans from doing any business with them. The U.S. lawmakers targeted in response by Beijing on Monday have all been vocal critics of a new national security law that expands the authority of Beijing in Hong Kong. Now, last month, China also announced sanctions against Cruz, Rubio, Smith, and other U.S. officials after Washington penalized Chinese officials over the treatment of Uyghur Muslims in its Xinjiang region. Beijing's latest measure also includes new sanctions against the heads of the U.S.-based campaign groups Freedom House and Human Rights Watch. Both had been subjected to sanctions in December in relation to Hong Kong. Now, it also imposed sanctions on the head of the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs and the International Republican Institute. So, at the best, you can say they're certainly not partisan. They're going after both parties. Obviously, the situation with China is deteriorating on a daily basis, and this is one of those things that I really believe people should be paying attention to. They've done a lot of bad things, and the United States has responded in kind. They've also told their citizens that they need to be ready for physical confrontation with the United States. So I'm just going to say, erring on the side of caution, I think that we should be ready for physical confrontation with China. And as long as we have the ability to be prepared, we need to get prepared. Protect yourselves, protect your families, make sure you have supplies on hand, and keep an eye out for information about China in the news. And finally, a small update on the CV-19 situation. President Trump recently got in trouble on social media for saying that children were a lot less likely to come down with this or receive some negative health effects. So let's take a look at this brief clip from my friend aka Real Dirty on Twitter regarding what's happened with children and testing.
The U.S. surpassing 5 million coronavirus cases as Texas records its highest 7-day positivity rate since the pandemic began for that state. And as the nation wrestles with reopening schools in the fall, a new report finds more than 97,000 children tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 2 weeks of July.
Well, there you have it, 97,000 new cases in children in the last 2 weeks. Who would have thunk? Just as we're entering August and the time when schools should be reopening. What do you want to bet? They're going to use this as an excuse to keep schools closed because, of course, we have to protect our teachers and everybody else that these children might communicate it to. So, all right, guys, that is all I have for you today. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am Zak the Corruption Detector, and this was another edition of Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, one more thing. I just want to thank everyone for watching today. If you have not subscribed yet, I urge you to please consider subscribing. There will be a couple of videos that pop up if you want to continue to watch. There's also some ways in the description of this video that you can follow me on other platforms. Please consider doing that as well. And if you want to support the program directly, there are means to do that below as well. Thank you all for your support over the last couple of years. Consider liking and sharing this video and help me get the real news to people who don't yet know they've been lied to.